Welcome to NeverLag. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, and I am joined by the man who fell in the pit, Zach. And this is This Week in Gaming, the show where we bring you the news, reviews, and hot takes from the past week in video games. If you're into it, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/NeverLag. If you have no cash, no worries. We thank you for your support right here by watching on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts. And maybe throw us a like, comment, subscribe, rating. Any of those things would be greatly appreciated. With all that out of the way, let's get into This Week in Gaming. Let's talk some games. We've got how many stories do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
8 or 9,
7
8,
stories
7.
today. Yeah, so let's jump right into it. Our first story of the past week. We talked about Sifu last week, and we mentioned how you might not play it. It remains to be seen how far you'll get into it because of the difficulty.
I'll play it. I will play it.
Right. But the difficulty
I don't know how
was
far
the
I'll
question.
Get. Yes.
Our story this week, I'm pulling from Game Rant, an article telling us that Sifu will be adding difficulty options post-launch alongside, other accessibility options, including visual, sound cues, and new subtitle options. It will also be receiving a high contrast mode for the console versions of the game, which previously were only available on PC. But the main takeaway here for a lot of people is the difficulty options. What does this mean for Zach and Sifu?
For Sifu, I think it's a good move. I mean, I think difficulty options are kind of a no-brainer. We've talked about this in previous weeks. I think there's something to be said for a difficult game or a very specific challenge or mechanical system. I think that allows developers to be really intentional about the type of experience they're crafting. Sifu has been pretty divisive. I mean, I think it's gotten a lot of praise, but it's been somewhat divisive in terms of its broad appeal because of the very specific choices made by the developer. And I think those difficulty choices and the way they've structured their game is what makes it unique. And as much as I am not as much of a pain player like you, the reason I'm interested in Sifu is partly because of its structure. Right. Yes. I'm less of a masochist when it comes to video games, but part of the appeal, even for me, is this unique system of having a set age that you can get to through, cumulative deaths, paired with getting really good at martial arts. And I kind of like what they've done conceptually. I don't know if it's going to stick for me in terms of enjoyment and play style. So that's what remains to be seen for me. But coming back to the original question of difficulty settings, yeah, having lower difficulty settings is great for let's say I get into it and I'm really enjoying the vibe and the ambiance, but the difficulty is just too much. Maybe it's something I'll make use of. I really like to think I'm going to finish this game on its current difficulty, but there are also folks who have accessibility issues with video games where they're not capable of playing them. And so I think this is good news for everybody. So I'm excited to see this.
Yeah. Who knows when it'll be coming? It says in the future. So
yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully it'll be around sooner than later. And, more people getting to experience a game that they want to experience is good. I'm of two minds on the subject. I think obviously accessibility is a big topic, and having your game being more accessible, it's hard to argue that being a bad thing. But on the other side, I also do think not every experience is for everyone. I think it's okay to have some games that maybe just aren't for certain people. But that said, I think that this is a good call. I think a good medium is maybe having some trophies, luck behind difficulties, or whatever for those who really want to go the extra mile. But the great thing about accessibility features and adding difficulty options is it helps not only those who need the accessibility, but even those who don't. Some people just like to customize their game and play a game however they want to play a game. So cool to see them adding this in. It does seem like this is becoming a trend. It'd be great to see a trend where this is on launch. But I assume if you jumped into Sifu day one, you maybe looked at reviews and knew you were in for a difficult time. But yeah, that'll be coming sometime in the future, so we can look forward to that. Our next story I'll throw over to you.
Yeah, so I found this particularly funny, given that we always joke about how you're playing
What,
Genshin
at my
Impact
expense?
at your expense. Yeah, we always kind of make fun of Levi because he's always like, I've also been playing Genshin Impact, and it's uh, sort of a guilty pleasure, sort of not. Actually, Genshin is, monetization aside, has become a pretty impressive game. But there's a story from Game Rant recently that is maybe more of a horror story that any parent with children who have access to credit card funds can sympathize with. So at the end of last year, a man named Ling Chang Mong found himself in $20,000 of credit card debt from Genshin Impact. His daughter had been playing, and she had just been spending like crazy on, presumably
She
unlocking.
got 3 characters.
She probably got upwards of 2 to 3 characters from that 20 grand, um, which is just absurd. But at the same time, if you think about how the monetization is structured in Genshin, um, it's pretty egregious, and they're clearly targeting whale, like the term whales, not referring to like the size of this child, but referring to the term of someone who goes all in into a monetization scheme, is like kind of
People who
the
spend exorbitant amounts of
yeah,
money
exactly. And
in
so
games are targeted.
right, and so often this will
But
be
it's
people who
also
have,
targeting, so like there's adults who make that decision whether
yeah,
it's to their detriment or not, but it also inherently targets children who are much more susceptible to these types of predatory situations, which it looks like that was the case here. That's why we're trying to regulate these things.
yeah. So I thought it was worth bringing up just because I think monetization continues to be an issue. Genshin, as much as it's a fun game that we give you a hard time about, I think this is a good example of the problems that can come from this. Thankfully, Mr. Lim managed to get a refund for about half of that money. So
Oh, he
he's
only got
only
half.
he's only 10K in the hole for Genshin Impact,
The
which,
title says he gets money back. That's half is not. Oh my goodness, he still lost 10
yeah, if you
grand.
read later, yeah,
Oh
that's
my
that's what it says
goodness.
later in the article. So
I
it's
was about to
pretty
say this man.
heartbreaking.
I was about to say this man's a genius. He blamed the whole thing on his daughter. He spent $20,000 and then was like, "Oh, my daughter got my credit card," and he was about to get all that for free, but he only got half of it back. So
I know
not
this
a
is giving
great.
me this is giving me ideas.
It didn't work out. Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, so it's quite the fable here that if you were to try this, it may not work in your favor. So anyway, I found this kind of amusing, but kind of horrifying. I assume if she was able to get to 20,000 before they noticed that, they have to be doing okay financially, but still, that's a lot of money.
I don't
That's a
know
lot of
about that.
money.
You can do that real quick in a lot of these games. It's a problem. All right, our next story broke this week as well. Many people's surprise.
I believe it's
Cyber
many's is people's is.
Many's people's surprises. Cyberpunk dropped its next gen patch, its next gen update. Shadow dropped it. No one expecting it, just out of nowhere. Patch 1.5. We've been expecting it for quite some time. It's been delayed with the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk, as well as the state that it was in on last gen consoles, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, I believe. So kind of it's the update seems to be getting pretty good feedback, but a little bit mixed feelings on when they dropped this. Um, Seems like an interesting time. Some people are upset because they've been waiting for this for a year now,
Mm-hmm.
and being like, okay, when this happens, I'm going to jump back into this game that was very broken at launch. And lo and behold, they shadow drop it days before Horizon Forbidden West, as well as Elden Ring, which are two massive open world games. And people are kind of like, what the heck? Why would you do this to us?
I wonder if it was intentional. Like they're still worried they're going to have issues. So if they shadow drop it when people aren't paying attention, they can have a smaller sample size of players to like work out additional kinks. I don't. It's hard to say if this was intentional or not. I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
they've got to be skittish after the repeated failures of leading up to like end of 2020. But I don't know.
It's
CD
it's
Project
odd.
Red, CD Project Red is no longer a company I'm super confident in terms of like operational capability. So who knows?
Yeah, they're rebuilding the relationship with the public at large right now. So I don't know. This was an
It's a
interesting
generous,
choice.
rebuilding is a generous term, but they're
Well,
they're
yeah,
inching their way there.
yeah. So yeah, I thought this was interesting. The only way I can make sense of it is that they have an announcement for additional content or an expansion that they're planning for later in spring, and they need to get this out of the way.
Yeah.
And this isn't their big, because otherwise I just feel like they would have marketed this. I think this was a big thing a lot of people were looking toward as the redemption arc for this game, and for them to shadow drop it, and it's been getting fairly positive reception, I think. So I don't think it's them trying to sneak it out or anything. I feel like they have to have something else they're trying to meet a timeline for, and this just has to get out, because
Yeah.
otherwise, why would you do this to people? It's I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches for those who've been looking forward to it. You have too much open world games to play at the moment, but
Yeah.
interesting decision. Maybe we'll know more in a few months here.
I'd like to play Cyberpunk. It's been on my list for a while, but the thing is, even if this patch gets it into a state where it's now something I might be interested in playing, it's no longer a priority. Like, they kind of missed their window. And if I'm going to pick between two different games, I'm going to pick Horizon or Elden Ring or Gran Turismo. I'll probably get around to Cyberpunk eventually. I think it still looks like it offers some pretty cool things, but I think they made their bed and they're lying in it. So I don't know. I'm sure eventually we'll get around to it. But for those who are interested in playing and are like eager to get into a more stable version, it's definitely not bad news that the patch is out.
Yeah, certainly not a bad thing. Interesting timing, but not a bad thing at all. Okay, our next story is back to you.
Cool. So for our next story, I just wanted to highlight some progress with the Steam Deck. So I don't know about you, but I've been keeping an eye on this. Like, I have a Switch. I love it. I have a PC that I built last year and I love it. I really like the idea of having a portable PC to play certain games. I think the Steam Deck is probably not going to be ideal for like really intensive games that I want to play, but there are a lot of things that, like, Ori or Inscriptions on my list, things that are less graphically intensive that I would love to play on the go. So I'm pretty excited about the Steam Deck. And uh, they recently released an update that they are nearing 300 verified games. So they've added more than 150 games in the past week to like the verified list of games that are going to be available on the Steam Deck at launch. So that's promising. That's feels like it's starting to be a decent offering at launch.
So this is going to have. I thought that this was going to be just an extension of essentially, although it is a PC and can do kind of whatever you want it to do. I thought it was going to be an extension of Steam, and if I have it in my Steam library, to varying degrees of success, it will be able to boot up on my Steam Deck. But apparently, that's not the case. They have to sign off on all these titles that are usable.
That's what it sounds like. I'm not sure if there's like a QA testing element where they're making sure that they work on the new technology, or if it's more of a like agreements and partnerships conversation where they have to get approval for a new platform. So
It
I'm not
shouldn't be
really
a new
sure.
platform though, right? It's just Steam still.
Yeah, I guess
It's
the
a
Steam.
PC.
Yeah, it's another PC. So you'd
So
think that wouldn't be the
interesting.
case, but it seems to be the process they're going through. But sounds like the highlights from the current list are God of War, Psychonauts 2, Sekiro, Horizon Zero Dawn, um, Death Stranding.
Okay.
So there's some good offerings here.
300's nothing
Yeah.
to shake a stick at, so that's good that they're approved, whatever this means. And for me, I'm probably going to set the Steam Deck out based on price point and me not terribly needing what it's going to provide. There was a time where I was in love with the Switch and the ability to play things anywhere, and just currently that I could take or leave that half the time. Um, Combine that with the fact that one of my streaming games is becoming a little bit more mainstream, to use
Mm-hmm.
that word redundantly, but I think I'm kind of waiting to see how this shakes out between like xCloud and these various things. How well in 2 years can I play, Game Pass on my phone? What's the latency like? Do I need a dedicated handheld system? Based on the price point of this, I'm going to sit this out, but I'm curious to see how it goes over, and I'm curious to see what the space looks like with the Steam Deck competing with the Switch and being kind of the first thing to re-enter that space where the Switch has just dominated over the past few years. And didn't the Switch just pass PS4 sales? I'm trying to remember, they just reached a very large metric. I mean, the Switch is just, everyone has 4 Switches in their house, a
Yeah.
little bit exaggerative, but it'll be nice to see some competition in the space. And I'd like to think that this will make Nintendo compete a little harder. It won't. Nintendo doesn't care what anyone does, but here's hoping.
Yep. At this point, the Switch has outsold PlayStation, and the Wii. It has not quite outsold PS4. So the Switch
Okay.
has sold 103.5 million. PlayStation 4 is 116. So they're coming up on it. But um, either way, you're right. I mean, they're absolutely the dominating console in mobile gaming at the moment. So it'll be nice to see something different that's not a non-Nintendo offering, which is part of what I'm excited
I'd
about.
frankly love to see. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be streaming or what, but I'd love to see Sony.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of abandoned their PSP and the Vita, and I'd love to see
Mm-hmm.
them take another stab at this space because I think there's a lot of desire for these handheld things, and I don't think streaming is to the point yet where people are sold and completely in on it. I think
Mm-hmm.
you could easily have a very successful Sony handheld over the next 3 to 5 years,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
who knows? Next one is still you.
Yeah. So one other story. Um, there is a Bioshock movie in progress. So Take Two Interactive is partnering with Netflix. This is kind of cool. Like the original Bioshock was a game that I really liked, and it also terrified me when I was younger. Um, kind of interested in what the movie's going to look like. I think video game adaptations are always kind of hit and miss, often a little bit more miss than hit. But I think we've we've had some good hits with Netflix and like Arcane being a fantastic series. So I don't know. We'll have to see. We also have Last of Us coming soon-ish on HBO. So it's going to be interesting to see if more of these video game adaptations can kind of up their game in quality. But yeah, I think there was supposed to be a BioShock film in the late 2000s. That got canned. So this is kind of back on deck. It's unclear, or maybe I think the original Bioshock director Ken Levine. I don't know that he's involved in this project. So kind of curious to see if he's not involved. Like, does that impact kind of the vision or the overall quality? It may or may not, but I don't think we have a date yet on exactly when this is
Are
coming
we aware
out.
of where this is taking place? Is this a story of the original Bioshock? Is this infinite? Is this unrelated to? Is this just in the same universe, or is it the storyline of one of the games? Do we have any of that information at this point?
We don't, at least with the article that I read
Okay.
on respawnstation.com. But the 2K Twitter account that tweeted about the Bioshock movie, there's an image of the original Bioshock like cover art. So
Okay.
I imagine it's set. It looks like
That
it's
would be
set
my
in Rapture.
assumption.
Yeah, it looks
Since
like
they
it's
didn't specify, my assumption would be it is
mhm,
deep beneath the ocean. And for
yeah,
those who don't know the games, the first one is set um,
in the city of
basically on the
Rapture.
ocean, in the city of Rapture on the ocean floor.
Yeah,
And then later down the road, a sequel called Infinite was actually set in the clouds. So very different settings depending on which way they go here. But since they didn't specify, one would assume it's the original. Um, yeah,
and
we'll see. Could be good, could be bad. The fact that you're able to say that video game adaptations into film and movies and TV shows is a mixed bag is actually a step up from where we were a few years ago. I
very
mean,
true.
we've come a long way. It used to be just not a mixed bag, just quite terrible.
Just
But I
a
do
just a
think
bad bag.
just a bad bag. I think the space is changing a lot. Whereas in years past, video game adaptations were seen in the film industry as more of a novelty to cater to a very specific and almost niche audience. Whereas video games are becoming so mainstream now that I think we're at a point where they're getting the attention they deserve and they're putting the money and the quality into it. And we're starting to see that the dividends of that. And so, yeah, I mean, with a lot of these, we're about to see a lot of video game TV shows and movies over the next couple years. And some of them I'm sure will be near the top end of the medium, I think. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. Okay. Next story is just a little tidbit to throw in here. Sony unveiled their new PlayStation Productions intro. Um, so if you haven't gotten a chance to look at it, go take a look at it. This is as of now, this is specifically geared towards their Sony's big push into um, what we were talking about. Actually, this is quite a good segue. Sony is making a big push into adapting a lot of their IP and franchises into TV shows and movies, which makes sense. They're Sony, right? Um, but this introduction is basically it's very similar to what Marvel does. You kind of have that very cinematic opening to a Marvel, anything Marvel, where you see all the characters and it
Yeah.
very elegantly shows them all off, and okay, I'm getting into the Marvel universe right now. Well, Sony's trying to do that with their IP.
The
This is their
Sony
new
Cinematic
introduction.
Universe.
Exact. They're. I mean, it's pretty clear they're trying to. Marvel kind of did it, and now everyone wants their version of what Marvel has. So the only thing I had to say about this specifically is that it's unclear if this will be used for their games. I'm not sure if they're trying to, if they will. I'm not sure if Sony will keep any sort of separation between church and state, if you will, between their TV shows and their video games. If they'll have different intros, or if they want them all to have the exact same thing, so that you play a game and you're like, okay, I know what I'm. It's all encompassing. And if that's the case, I am actually a little bummed. It's not bad. There's nothing bad about this intro that they did. It's fine, but I actually really like the one PlayStation Studios is the intro they had from, I think it's last year, maybe 2 years ago now, where it does a similar thing where it shows off all the main characters you know and love from PlayStation, but it's doing so reflecting off of um, the buttons on the controller, right? The
Yeah.
cross button, the triangle, circle, and square, and you know they're like rotating, and it's very reflective surface showing all the characters. It's very very visually well done. I liked it better. I prefer it to this one. I'd like to see them keep the PlayStation Studios introduction. Not sure if I'm not sure what they'll end up doing, if they're going to can that one and use this one for everything. But I don't know. Do you have any
I think,
thoughts after
yeah, I
watching it?
mean, this was announced as the PlayStation Productions intro, so it feels like it's separate. My guess is this is what we're going to see before the HBO version of The Last of Us, um, and I think future PlayStation games. I don't know that we should expect to see this elsewhere, but they haven't really said, so
Productions
who
is
knows?
pretty. That's a vague term, though. Couldn't productions be used to introduce a video game as well? I mean, is production, is that a very specific TV show term or movie term?
Yeah, I think production. I think
Okay.
Hollywood. But I'm not in the industry, so I could be wrong. But to me, that sounds like the Hollywood term. That sounds like their film related stuff. But who knows? I mean, maybe they will use it elsewhere. I also really liked uh, the non productions one. The one they released a couple years ago was really cool. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. And
Yeah, I don't
we're
know
gonna
if
have
I don't know if they're going
multiple.
to keep. Basically, the question is, are they going to keep a distinction between PlayStation Productions and PlayStation Studios, or is Productions replacing everything? I don't
Yeah,
know. If
they
you've
they
if you
didn't
haven't
they
seen
didn't
it, go take a
clarify.
look at it. Let me know what you think. I'm nitpicking here. I just kind of like the old one a little bit better, but well, what can you do? So,
Yeah.
all right, next one's you.
So our next story, Nintendo is shutting down some of their old online stores. So their Nintendo Wii and 3DS shop is going to be winding down over the next year. So this is a bummer. I think this kind of raises the concerns everyone has about kind of archiving of old games and your digital inventory. I shudder to think about how much money I've spent on digital versions of games over the past 10 years and how many of those are no longer things I can access or use. On Nintendo particularly, I think it's been several platforms where I've bought Mario 64, like some of the really old classic games. I'm like, oh, I want to play that again. So I buy it on the Wii and then, on the Switch. And now these things are just going to keep winding down. And it's honestly a very frustrating anti-consumer practice. So Nintendo's continuing with this. I mean, this doesn't surprise me from Nintendo at all, but the timeline currently looks like May 23rd of this year, 2022. You will no longer be able to add funds to your wallet via credit card for Nintendo Wii U or DS. As of August 29th this year, you will no longer be able to use prepaid like Nintendo gift card funds to add funds to your wallet for Wii U or DS. And then by end of March 2023, you will no longer be able to make any purchases, as well as you will no longer be able to download anything for Wii U or your 3DS. So get to that this year. Don't put that off. And it's a real bummer, but I think it's important that everybody knows that, one, so that we can all yell at Nintendo, which will do nothing. But two, if you have anything in those stores you want to download onto your old consoles, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, yeah. This is. I mean, this is just another another occasion of this happening, showing that this is a problem. Um, it's a problem that's very unique to video games, and that we are. I don't know. It seems like we're just going to keep dealing with this because I just don't know. We've talked about this. There's not really an incentive for these companies to
Mm-hmm.
protect the lineage of their games. There's no financial incentive for them to do so. And it's, you hate to see it. And Sony faced a lot of backlash for this. I think that was 2020, maybe last year, and they actually reversed. They reversed it, but it's hard to see Nintendo doing that. They're not. That's not their style. They'll just ride out the hate until it's a whisper. But
Yep. And we'll all
I don't
buy
know.
whatever the next thing is from them,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and the other thing I hate about this is I'm not on. I'm not using my Wii. I'm not using my 3DS
Not these days.
anymore. So it doesn't affect you from that standpoint. And so people are like, well, you're not playing it. Why does it matter? Well, these games, they cease to be available anywhere, you know. And the thing is that with the Switch, Nintendo is moving towards a subscription model, meaning that a lot of these games, unless you own a physical copy or already have purchased a digital copy. Let's say in 2025 you find out about this Wii game you want to go back and play, you can no longer do it. Um, and the solution Nintendo is offering now is going to be their subscription model, which then you continue to have no control over what you own or what you can play 10-15 years from now. Whereas I can go into my storage closet here, pull out a PlayStation 2 game, put it in the PlayStation 2, and I'm back in 2007, 2006, 5, I don't know. Um, yeah, we're starting to reach an issue where it's like, how long until they shut down the PlayStation 4 um, store? A little bit
Yeah.
less of an issue over an Xbox. They're doing a great job with this thing, with all of their
Mm-hmm.
cross generation, supporting everything, making sure, I mean, original Xbox content is playable on the Series X. That is,
Yeah.
they're the industry standard, and they're the exception to the rule because no one else is doing it. And it makes me wonder. I mean, it's why emulation continues to exist as strongly as it does, because these companies will not protect video game history, really,
Yeah.
and so it
I think
falls to other
emulation
people.
I think emulation, unfortunately, is the real answer. Like, it's
Yeah,
great that Microsoft is really focused on that backward compatibility. And so I like to think that they'll be doing that for a long time, hopefully, but they could change their minds in the future. Even if they don't, they're just one entity of multiple that have a lot of the games we have played and loved. And, some games are re-released and, remastered, and that's great. But there are some games where it's like, I just want to go play the original game. And I would love, emulators always feel just a touch off to me. Like, they don't quite capture the entire feel of what it was like to play a game on its original console. And, the N64, I think it's at my parents', but I can go into my parents' basement and blow out the cartridge of Mario 64 and put it in, and,
and you're
have
right
the
back.
destroyed controller, and you can kind of be back for a minute. It would be nice to be able to go download things on your old consoles. Like, am I playing my Wii, or my DS anymore? No. If there was a game I really wanted to experience again, I would like the option to do that. And this type of model doesn't allow for that. So
Yeah,
it's not the most important thing for me and for many people, but I think there are some people who care deeply. And just generally, it's anti-consumer to have something you've paid money for that you can no longer access. With a physical copy, I mean, those degrade over time as well, but you can still play some of your games from 20, 30, 40 years ago if you keep those things in decent working order.
yeah.
Whereas in this case, you're kind of sunk.
And to be clear, if you've purchased something on these platforms, you will continue to have access to them. They've not mentioned anything about completely shutting this down, but it does leave you to wonder how much longer, when my games depend on these digital storefronts, um, 10, 20, 30 years down the line, will I still,
Mm-hmm.
even if I have this downloaded to my machine, will I be able to open it up and play it? That's kind of the age of video games we're living in at this point, and it's a little worrisome. We need to kind of figure out how to preserve some of video game history. Well, I guess we already have. It's just not through official means.
Right.
Okay. Our last story is a good one. Horizon Forbidden West review roundup. So Horizon came out last night or today, and right now on Metacritic, it has in fact fallen to an 88, which is criminal. And well, I guess I can't say I haven't played it. It feels criminal to me, but it's sitting at an
I hope
89
it's
on
criminal.
Opencritic. I hope it's criminal. And let's see, I'll pull a couple here. IGN scored it a 9 out of 10. Quote, a triumphant combination of enthralling combat, top tier creature and character design, and a captivating open world. Horizon Forbidden West is an absolute blast and a fantastic showcase for the power of the PS5. End quote. Way at the other end of the spectrum, we have a. I'm gonna pull this one in just because I think it's funny. It's a 60 out of 100 by Gamer.no. I honestly haven't heard of these guys until right now, but it says, quote, Horizon Forbidden West fails to live up to its predecessor in just about every way. While the world and its many new machines are stunning, the experience is bogged down with confusing design choices and variation for the sake of variation, making Aloy's newest adventure one to forget, end quote. So, all in all, I mean, it's getting great reviews. It's still sitting at an 88, 89, which is good. But um, the thing that I want to shed light on is that the original Horizon Zero Dawn is sitting at an 89. And so there's your review roundup. I mean, go get it, go play it. It's obviously going to be good to varying degrees, if not great. But I just think it's funny that we're at a point with the review industry at large is just such a, I don't know. I feel like we're just so critical of things at this point in this industry. I have not yet played Forbidden West, but from everything I've seen, to look at Forbidden West and imagine that it's a lower score than Zero Dawn is very hard to make sense of. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, or for that matter, like lower than a lot of very middling games. Like a 6 out of 10's pretty low, I think.
Oh
I
yeah, I'm not
agree.
even talking about the 6 out of 10. To look at this game and imagine a 6 out of, like, you can look at this game and know it's not a 6 out of 10,
Yeah,
even if you didn't like design choices in it. Like it's kind of funny.
yeah, it's tough, right? Because I mean, reviewing is inherently pretty subjective, and I think not only are tastes different, and what things are going to work for some people won't work for others. The severity of scale is going to vary. Like I know some people who they don't like one or two things, they'll drop it down a ton, whereas others they may not like quite a few things and they'll still give it a really high rating. I probably skew a little more towards that side, but it's hard to know. And I think there's so much noise on the internet that it's easy to kind of distill everything down to its Opencritic or Metacritic score and say, oh man, this is only an 88 out of 100 and the other one was 89. Maybe I shouldn't play it. And I find myself sometimes falling into that thinking, and it's like how stupid, like how asinine is that I'm willing to reduce a piece of art and like a huge triumph of engineering and programming into just this quick decision where I haven't really evaluated it for myself. And so I think reviews obviously have a place and are directionally helpful. I think it's important for us to have some level of criticism about uh, media to kind of raise the bar, and it's fun to talk about what works and doesn't work. But I think it's easy to get on the internet and just be overly critical and look to tear anything, like you can tear anything apart if you want, right? Like you can always find something. So I think it's worth keeping that in mind. And the reviews are obviously pretty overwhelmingly positive. um, Everyone seems to say that this improves upon some of the things that didn't work as well in the original, and it amps up some of the things that do work well. There's maybe a couple of things that aren't operating, aren't pumping full cylinder, but I think at the end of the day, this is going to be one of the better experiences that we have this generation of consoles. And I think it's worth trying for yourself and feeling that out. And you can't rely on reviewers for everything. If something is clearly broken, it's good to have reviewers to help you make sure you're not spending your money in a way where you're kind of being
Right.
conned by a really uh, a crappy publisher. But in this case, like, what is a reviewer going to tell you that is really going to change
Yeah.
your decision other than trying the game out for yourself?
And to be fair, no one's putting down Horizon Forbidden West because it has an 88 over an 89 or whatever, like 1 point. But I do, and that's why we have so many different review sites that we pull from to try and get a better sense. Like obviously, if all you had was the 60 and IGN's 90, then that would average out to what, 75.
Mm-hmm.
So Horizon's a 75. So that's why we have so many reviews, and that helps kind of cut through the subjectivity that exists within the review space. But I do think there's a certain amount of responsibility that lands on these bigger sites that actually are counted on for the reviews. Reviews are inherently subjective, but you need to bring a balanced amount of objectivity to a review, in that if this game is not for you, if it's not, if it's not your style or what you're into, then A, why are you reviewing it? And B, if you have to review it, you need to have some self-awareness and realize, like, this beautiful work of art that I personally didn't like or had certain gripes with is not a 60 out of 100. You can just look at it. There's some common sense involved. So anyways, I do have a horse in the race, so I am not at all objective. We were playing our fantasy critic league where we drafted games for this year, and I took Horizon #1 pick overall, fully expecting a score in the 90s, which is not
Yeah.
going to happen at this point. But to see it fall below Zero Dawn, I was very shocked. And I don't know. I think we're a little hard on games these days. We've talked
Yeah.
about this a little bit, but the bar for games, there's so many games,
Mm-hmm.
and we've seen it all before. True innovation is very rare. And so everything gets compared against the backdrop of 20, 30 other games that have done it better or worse or the same. And we end up nitpicking things to death instead of just sometimes appreciating how hundreds of people came together and made something this phenomenal,
Yeah.
that looks this good and plays this good. So we can't say for sure. We're going to jump in here pretty soon and play it, and eventually we'll do a breakdown on Forbidden West and find out if it is in fact a 60 out of 100. So stay tuned for that, I suppose. I think that sums up the main stories we pulled from this week. Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's what you need to know this week, according to us.
according to us. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with us. This has been This Week in Gaming. Remember, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeverLag. Thank you for watching right here on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will catch you next time on NeverLag.